Folks, this is a demo of the AI trigger points feature that's being introduced in Torus version 30 in the spring of 2025. So I'm going to show you all how to use the feature. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what the feature is first. Um, Quick note, this feature is also called by some activation points or AI activation points. I'm going to call it trigger points just because that's what it's actually called. You'll see when I'm doing my demo, in the authoring interface, it's called trigger points. So I want to avoid that confusion. But if you hear someone talking about activation points, it's the same thing. This is a feature that uses Torus's .ai capabilities that we introduced last year in beta development. That means it's an available feature, but it's still only available if an admin enables it for you. And it is a feature where I would recommend some caution, just because this is, an AI that you'd be putting in front of your students. It definitely is important to play around with it and get your arms around like what are those interactions going to be like in your particular course before you consider using it. But if you are interested in using .ai or like with or without the trigger points I'm going to talk about, you can talk to us and we can talk about whether it makes sense for us to have an admin enable it for you. But I'll talk you through what the feature is now. Essentially, what the trigger points do, as you'll see, is they allow in the authoring interface, an author can embed a .ai prompt into a page, a group, a paragraph, or a question. And you'll see that there can kind of be like preset places where the student could be encouraged to interact with the AI in a particular way. Before I do my demo, I do want to have a quick caveat. So I'm going to use my typical demo course, which is called AI Generated Purple Unicorns. That's what I do most of my demos in. This is a really small and nonsensical course. It really just exists for demo purposes. Most of the language in it is generated by ChatGPT about AI generated purple unicorns, and that is about as coherent as you would probably expect it to be. So I don't actually expect the interactions with the .ai for this course to be particularly great. I mean, in the sense that the .ai knows what the course knows, and this particular course doesn't really know very much that's useful. So I don't actually think that the .ai is going to be very useful. This is definitely a feature that I think would work better in a larger course and in a more coherent course where there's actually a lot of knowledge and connections and ways that that the .ai might be able to connect a student with useful answers. So all of that to say, this is really going to be a demo about mechanics of how you would use the interface to implement AI trigger points in a course. I'm not really doing a demo intended to show you, how this interaction might actually go. In fact, when I get to the student interface, I'm not even really going to be doing a lot of reading of what the .ai interactions are. I'm just going to show you how to get it to work. But definitely, if you're more interested, you can talk to us and we can kind of give you more specific information about your course. All right, so let's get to it. So I have this AI trigger points checklist that I've made, and if you want, you can kind of pause the demo and maybe take a screenshot or just use this for yourself if you're interested in using .ai. AI trigger points specifically, because there are a couple of steps here, and this could be a confusing feature to use if you just kind of go in and are poking around. So the first two steps in my checklist both happen in the project overview screen in the authoring interface. We want to actually turn on trigger points. And then there's another feature called calculate embeddings on publish. And I'll show you that in a moment. Once the trigger points feature is enabled, then as an author, you can go in and insert trigger points into project content. You would, just like any other content, you would need to actually publish and push out those updates for them to appear in a product or in a course section. then, as I mentioned before, then you do actually need an admin to turn this on section by section. So if you have a course section where you want to use it, then an admin would have to go in for that section and turn it on. And then any other sections by default, even though you've inserted that AI trigger point content in the authoring interface, the trigger points are not going to actually appear in that section unless it's been enabled. And then finally, as I said, this is the type of feature where you do kind of want to validate for your course, how does this actually work? You don't want to just turn it on and then put it in front of students without really understanding what that interaction is going to look like. You do want to play around with it. So let's actually get to the demo part. I'm going to come over to where I'm already logged in to the Torus authoring interface. This is on our tokamak server. I'm recording this on March 5th, and our release date for Torus 30 isn't until April 7th. So tokamak is our test server. This is where we have our version 30 content now, but once we have our release, you'll be able to access the same content in production on our Proton server and any other production servers where it's been version 30 has been deployed. So I am, just to make this demo easier, I am logged in as an admin so that I can kind of take you through the full experience. I do want to say, other than the step I'm going to show you where I actually go in and enable in the course section the .ai and the trigger points, I don't need to be an admin to do anything else that I'm showing you. So you could just be logged in as any regular author and you would be able to follow these steps. I'm going to click into my demo course, which is AI generated purple unicorns. And as I showed you on the checklist, the first two steps I want to point out are on this project overview page. The first one is just this checkbox, which you can see is already checked. It says calculate embeddings on publish. Without getting into a lot of explanation, then this is basically just telling Torus that every time you publish new content, it should be communicating to .ai about what the new content is. The feature will work if you don't have this checked, but it could end up being frustrating if you're making changes and you're kind of not seeing those changes reflected in how .ai interacts with students. If I scroll down more, then I get to a section that's called AI triggers, and I'm just going to read through what it says here. When AI trigger points are enabled as an authoring feature, authors can insert a trigger point at the page level, group level, paragraph level, or question level. AI trigger points are currently enabled for this project, so I had actually, prior to this demo, gone in and enabled it. If it wasn't enabled, there would be a link here that I could select to enable AI trigger points. And it does say, note AI trigger points will only work for course sections that have .ai enabled. This must be enabled section by section by, it says a system administrator. It actually can be also an account administrator. Basically, you need to get an administrator to enable this section by section. So a couple things I want to point out here. One, I just want to point out again that even if this is enabled at the authoring level, and even if you've inserted trigger points, I want to highlight this last point. If you do not have an admin enable for the specific section you're looking at, then anything you do here with trigger points in the authoring interface isn't going to have any effect on course sections. So that really is an important point to clear up. Another thing that I want to point out here is, having enabled this, you'll see there's no links here. There's nothing I can interact with. That's because once AI trigger points is enabled, as of the release of version 30, our upcoming release, it cannot be disabled. That is really just for because we needed to get this part of the functionality working as quickly as possible, and making it so that it can be both enabled and disabled. It makes it a little bit more of a complicated and time-consuming feature to implement. So it's possible, if you're looking at this demo in the future, that when you look at the interface, you will actually see here a place to disable it. That could be a feature that we make in the future. But for right now, that's not possible. And if I did, come in here to enable it, and that link was here that I could enable it, I would get a warning when I clicked it that's just reminding me of that, just saying, hey, just so you know, once you enable this, it cannot be disabled again. So just make sure you really want to enable it. And then once you do that, it can't be disabled. Why might you not want to enable it? One, maybe you just don't want to use the AI trigger points feature and you don't want to be seeing, or you or any of your co-authors to be seeing AI trigger points, content or, the ability to insert that in the authoring interface. You'll see when I get to the content pages, there are places where it says, hey, you can put in an AI trigger point here. That could be confusing or distracting if it's not a feature you want to use. It particularly could be confusing if you have numerous authors in your project and maybe they don't know what AI trigger points are, or they don't know this thing where it has to be enabled section by section, and they're getting frustrated because they're putting things into a page and they're not seeing it when they publish in a section. That could be confusing. Another reason you might not want to enable it, again, if you have multiple authors, is if you are considering using AI trigger points, you might want to really think about who are the authors who are going to access this, and how are they going to actually use the feature, and how is it going to be pushed out to students? I mean, there are ways that you could have like a less than ideal prompt, and you just might want to be thoughtful before you enable it. Who are the authors? How are they going to use this feature? But all of this to say, any author can enable this, and it can't be disabled once it is enabled. All right, so those are our two checklist items from the overview page. Now I'm actually going to go and insert some AI trigger points into the content. So I'm going to go find a page. I'm going to put all 4 of these. If you remember from the overview page, there's 4 types of trigger points that I'll go over here. I'm going to put all 4 on the same page just for easier demo purposes. And I'm going to come into this unicorn metaphysics page here. Let's come in and edit. So the first type of trigger point that I'm going to discuss is the page level. And in order to see that, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the page, and you'll see here this .ai page trigger point. And it does have this icon here, this little like magic icon. This is the icon in Torus that we're using to represent an AI trigger point. So you'll see this in numerous places, both in the student interface and in the authoring interface. So I'm going to go ahead and enable a page level trigger. You'll see when I do this, I get a little information about what the trigger point is. And I can also click this guide to get some example prompts, just so I can kind of get an idea of what type of prompt might you want to insert here. When you have a page level prompt, basically it's going to, when the student navigates to this page, it's going to pop up that .ai, and it's going to act like this is the command that's been given to .ai. That's going to guide what the interaction is. So you want to think about, for a page level trigger, how do you want that interaction to go? What do you want the .ai to really, ask or be prompting, or what's the interaction with the student? So for this, I'm just going to put in, it can really be anything. I'm just going to say, ask the student if they know what unicorn metaphysics is. Again, I don't necessarily expect this to be a great interaction just because of the nature of the course, but this will be enough for us to see what that interaction is like. I do want to point out that at the page level here, there can only be one prompt. There's only going to be, the student navigates to the page, .ai pops up, and it's going to respond to one prompt here. So you'll see in other places there could be multiple prompts. At the page level, it's just this one prompt. And if I decided I wanted to do away with this again, I could just disable this, but I'm going to leave it here for the demo. The second type of trigger point I'm going to show you is at the paragraph level. So I'm going to come into where I have some text here. And let's pick right here in this text here. When I clicked into this paragraph, then this toolbar has shown up where I can insert different types or format different types of content in the paragraph. I'm going to come into this plus insert submenu, and you'll see when I click on this, then we have .trigger, and again we have that same icon that we always use for the trigger points. If I select that, it's going to put this paragraph level trigger point, and very similar to the page level, then I get some instructions, and I have this one place where I can put in a prompt. And I could also, again, get some example prompts here. I'm just going to say, ask the student what they think of the content so far. I'm not claiming that these are good prompts. So don't do what I do here. I can insert as many of these in wherever I want. I'm only going to do one for demo purposes, but you can see that even though I just have, like, every time I insert it, I just have this one field, I can put as many of these paragraph level um, prompts as I want. So that is something that you can do. And if I did want to get rid of it, here, let me just insert an extra one here. If I insert one here, and then let's say I decide I don't actually want that there, I would actually just backspace this like any other content in the paragraph, and it will get rid of it. That's how I would delete that if I decide later I don't want it. I'm going to leave this page level in here, right, under the top bit of content. And then I'm going to move on to the third type of trigger point, which is at the group level. So here, as shown from this dotted line, I have a content group. This is a did I get this prompt here for the students, and get some additional content there. And you can see, again, I have this .ai link here with the icon. I can select it. If I decided I didn't want to do that, I could just hit the trash there, but I can, have for each group one prompt. And for demo purposes, I am going to let's say ask the students to summarize the previous paragraph. And then finally, so we've seen three types of prompts so far. We saw the page level, the paragraph level, and this one is the group level. The final type of trigger point I can insert is the question level. So here I have a question, and I have this menu up here that authors will be familiar with. There's a new item in the menu that is .ai. I will show you this is a multiple choice question I've set up. I have a correct answer picked. I've got some hints. I've got an explanation. So I have this kind of fully loaded question. And when I go to .ai, I now see a link that says create new trigger. Something that's a little bit different about the question level is that you actually can have multiple triggers here. And you'll see if I insert it, the first thing it's going to ask is, like, what specifically in this question do you want to trigger? So there's student actions, and it's going to be dependent on what I've set up. So it could be a correct or incorrect answer. I actually have 4 different hints here, so I could pick any of those hints. I have 5 different hints here. I have an explanation. So all of these things are going to be, options. So I'm just going to pick when the student submits the correct answer, and then I'll have a prompt. Say evaluate the student's answer. This is a multiple choice one, so I don't know how helpful that would actually be, but this is just for a demo. I'll hit save. And then I can actually insert another trigger. So the one I just created is still there, but now when I go to pick a trigger, I've already made one for the correct answer, so that's grayed out. So now I can pick one of these other things, let's say for an incorrect answer. Give the student another worked example and save. So now I see when student submits the correct answer, we have this one prompt. When student submits an incorrect answer, we have another prompt. I have a little X here if I want to remove any of these. And I have 2 different triggers associated with this question. I could continue to insert them for as many different hints and explanations and whatnot that there are, but I'm going to leave it at these 2 for now. I will also say I'm pretty sure the way that this works in the student interface is that only one of these is actually going to trigger for this question. So if the student picks an incorrect answer and then they get the trigger point and that they have that interaction with Dot, and then they later pick the correct answer, they're not going to have a second interaction. It's basically like whichever one of these triggers first is how this works. So there will just be one dot interaction. It's actually just one trigger point. It's just saying which you can set up different prompts depending on what the student's action is. All right, so now I've set up my 4 different types of trigger point on this page. If we go back to my checklist here, I've gone through these top 2. I've inserted my triggers. So now I have to, of course, publish just like any other content. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Going to automatically be pushing this publication to all products and sections. So it'll just make it a little bit easier for me to do my demo. And I can hit publish. All right, so now I've published that. And the next thing I want to do is actually have an admin turn on .ai and AI trigger points for this section. Keeping in mind, if that had already happened in the past, then just publishing it, that now it will be in the section. But if you haven't already previously done that and it's not been enabled, then you are going to have an admin enable this for the section. So because I am logged in as an admin, I can just show you. I'm going to go to my admin panel. I'm going to find a course section that uses this project. And as it happens, I already have one set up here. So now I'm looking at the instructor dashboard for this section. I'm on the manage, which is the default. But I want to emphasize, I'm looking at this as an admin. So I'm seeing admin only content here. And part of the admin only content, if I scroll down, is this AI assistant. So just an instructor looking at this would not see this section. And you can see that I've actually already enabled these. I've enabled AI assistant, that's the .ai, and then I've enabled the trigger points. And I will point out that if I did just have, like if I disabled that, it actually disables both of them. The triggers use the AI assistant, so it doesn't make sense to only have the triggers enabled so that you have to have them both enabled. All right. So now I have completed these first 5 steps. As a reminder, if you were actually doing this and wanted to put it in front of real students, you really should make sure that you're doing it for a section without students first and kind of validating like what does that interaction look like. But in my case, for demo purposes, I'm just going to kind of log in as a student and show you what this interaction is going to look like. So I've got my student interface here. I'm going to log in as a student who is already enrolled in this course. You can see I'm in my unicorn demo course. I can go into that. And I want to find that unicorn metaphysics page. That is the page where I had set up all of the triggers. So let's go in here and see. You do see here I've got my .ai enabled, so I could just have kind of a regular interaction as a student where I ask a question and get a response back. But if I've set this up properly, once I click into this page, because I have that page level trigger, then it should pop up and kind of respond to the prompt that I had put in the authoring interface. So let's see if that happens. And you can see it's popping up, it's thinking. It's just gonna take a second. And I'm really, I had asked it to ask the student, do you know what unicorn metaphysics is? So it's giving me this whole interaction that it's come up with. And it's not just asking the prompt, it is an AI assistant. So it's kind of, responding to that prompt as opposed to just spitting it out. I'm not actually going to have an interaction, but you can see how this works where the page level trigger is popping up this content to kind of start the student off when they access the page. So the second trigger we had put in was that paragraph level trigger. And if we go to like right under here, you'll see this is where I had inserted that paragraph level trigger and the AI trigger points icon is here. So if the student clicks on it, then it is going to respond to that prompt here. Again, I'm not going to click in. I just want to show you that it actually is responding to the prompt based on how I had set this up. The third trigger I did was at the group level. So let's go down to that content group. That's this did I get this? And you'll see we've got this AI trigger points icon here. Very similarly, if I click this, the AI assistant is going to, I had said in the prompt there, can you summarize the points? It's going to ask about that. Can you summarize the key points? And then the final trigger I had done was the question level trigger. So, and I put that on this question here. Now, if you recall what I said, I had put a one prompt for a correct answer and a different prompt for an incorrect answer. And it's only going to give me one prompt of the ones I set up. So I'm going to pick what I think is the correct answer, and it should respond with the correct answer prompt. Yep, that is correct. And hello, great job answering that question. Feel free to ask. And I think now if I pick an incorrect answer, it's not going to pop up again. Though if I had picked that first, then it would have responded to that with the prompt I had set up for an incorrect answer. So that is my demo of AI trigger points, and I hope that you try out and are interested in this feature. Let me know, or let someone else in the Torus family know if you are interested in using this feature, if you want to learn more. And I hope that you have a great day. Bye.